Today we uncover a survivor's hidden cage. You'll see how Mara Ellis battles the shadows of trust destroyed. Her story reveals the unspoken terror of doubting your own reality. It pulls you back when you try to escape. Let's begin. The dim glow of Mara's laptop screen casts flickering shadows across her cluttered apartment, the only light in the room besides a sliver of street lamp sneaking through the blinds. She sits cross-legged on the worn couch, knees drawn up like a fortress, scrolling through old videos on her phone, grainy clips from happier times that now twist like knives. There's Alex's laugh, easy and warm, pulling her into a frame she once called home. Then the messages, the accusations, the unraveling. Her thumb hovers, pauses, replays. A heated argument captured in secret, her voice pleading, his turning cold. Numbness settles in her chest, a heavy fog that dulls the edges of everything, making her fingers feel like lead as she grips the device. Voiceover, soft, empathetic, like a distant confidant. In the wake of betrayal, isolation becomes a refuge, but it's also a cage. Mara Ellis, like so many survivors, grapples with the fear of trusting again, not just others, but herself. How do you step out when every memory pulls you back? She sets the phone down, the clatter echoing in the silence. Her breath comes shallow, mechanical, as if her body has forgotten how to feel without pain. The air feels thick, pressing against her skin, a tactile reminder of the walls she's built. Why did she let it happen? The question loops, self-lacerating, her mind replaying her own supposed flaws. The way she overlooked red flags, silenced her doubts to keep the peace. Guilt coils in her gut, hot and unrelenting, whispering that she deserved it, that her needs were the real betrayal. Rising slowly, Mara drifts to the bathroom mirror, the one cracked at the corner from a forgotten slam. She avoids her eyes at first, tracing the steam-fogged edges where last night's shower lingers. But the pull is there, inevitable. She wipes a hand across the glass, revealing fragments. Tired eyes shadowed by exhaustion, lips pressed thin against unspoken screams. The reflection stares back, distorted not by the crack, but by the weight of blame she carries. For a moment, numbness cracks. A tremor in her jaw, a sting behind her lids. Is this her? Not the victim in the videos, but the woman who survived? Her hand presses flat against the cool surface, feeling the faint vibration of her own pulse. The fog clears a little more, and in that fragile space, a whisper of something softer stirs. Not forgiveness yet, but a quiet acknowledgement. She's here, still whole beneath the shards. The voiceover fades in again. Rebuilding starts in these private reckonings, where isolation meets the first flicker of self-kindness. Mara lingers, breath fogging the mirror anew, the question hanging unspoken in the steam. Can she see herself clearly, untainted by the guilt that clings like condensation? A few days later, the camera's unblinking eye catches Mara in a dimly lit corner of her apartment, her fingers twisting a loose thread on her sleeve. She leans forward, voice barely above a whisper, the words tumbling out like stones from a crumbling wall. I keep thinking, what if I open up again and just dissolve? Everyone expects me to be fine, to forgive and move on. But inside, it's like I'm afraid I'll lose myself in their needs, their versions of me. Her eyes dart to the side, anxiety etching lines across her forehead. A tight knot in her chest, visible in the shallow rise and fall of her breath. The handheld lens sways slightly, mirroring her unease, the room's warm, muted tones doing little to soften the raw edge in her voice. She pauses, swallows hard, the silence stretching like a held breath. Then, with a resolve that feels borrowed, she grabs her coat and steps out. The city hums faintly beyond her door. Horns, distant chatter. But inside, her mind races. What if this is just another way to vanish? The therapy office door stands ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the hallway like an invitation she isn't sure she can accept. Mara hesitates. Hand hovering, heart pounding with the weight of that internal storm. Pushing it open, she steps through, the door easing shut behind her with a soft click that seals the moment. Jonas Reed looks up from his notes, his face calm, welcoming. The room bathed in soft afternoon glow from a single window. Mara, welcome. Take a seat whenever you're ready. She sinks into the chair opposite him, knees drawn close at first, then unfolding as she meets his steady gaze. I'm scared, she admits, the words gaining strength as they leave her lips. Scared of losing myself in what others want from me. Like, if I let anyone in, I'll bend until there's nothing left of who I am. Her voice wavers, but there's a flicker now, a cautious spark amid the tremor. Hope peeking through the cracks of her fear. Jonas nods, leaning forward just enough to bridge the space without invading it. That's a real fear, and it's okay to name it here. Let's start by hearing what you need in this moment. No rush, no expectations, just your pace. His tone is a gentle rhythm, structuring the chaos swirling in her, offering a scaffold for the vulnerability she's daring to voice. As the session unfolds, Mara's shoulders ease, the anxiety uncoiling thread by thread into something tentative, almost warm. She listens to her own words echoing back, not as threats, but as the first steps toward reclaiming her shape. The open door behind her, now closed but not locked, lingers in her periphery, a quiet promise. Can she trust this process? This self she's just begun to hear? The question hangs, unanswered, in the air between them. In the weeks that follow, the support group room hummed with the soft creak of folding chairs, a circle of faces lit by the dim glow of a single lamp. Mara sat on the edge, her knees drawn close, fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. Anxiety coiled in her chest, like a spring wound too tight. Every shared story felt like a spotlight waiting to swing her way, exposing the raw edges she still hid. Lena, across the circle, leaned forward, her voice steady but laced with the echo of old fractures. I'd let him define my days, Lena said, eyes distant yet sharp. Every boundary I tried to set, he'd chip at it until I forgot why I built it. But one morning, after another promise broken, I looked at myself in the mirror and said, enough. I started small, saying no to a call, then to a visit. It hurt like hell, feeling the pull back. But each time, I held the line. Now, I'm not fixed, but I'm mine again. The group murmured affirmations, nods rippling like gentle waves. Mara watched, her breath shallow, comparing every word to her own stalled steps. Lena's progress gleamed too bright, a mirror to Mara's stagnation. How could she admit her nights spent replaying Alex's lies, her fear of even whispering her needs? If she stayed silent, this circle might slip away, judging her weakness. Self-doubt gnawed. She's so far ahead. What if they see I'm not ready? Lena's hand rested on her wrist, where a simple threaded bracelet caught the light. Vibrant strands, woven tight, unfraying. This, Lena added, lifting it slightly. A friend made it after my first real no. Reminds me, connections can hold without breaking me. Mara's gaze lingered on the bracelet, its knots a quiet testament. Not accusation, but possibility. The anxiety ebbed, replaced by a cautious spark. Lena's story wasn't a verdict, but a map, edges blurring into her own uncharted path. She shifted, voice tentative. How? How did you know when to trust that boundary wouldn't end everything? Lena met her eyes, warm. You don't, at first. You just choose yourself anyway. The question hung in Mara's mind, unanswered yet alive. Could another's healing signal her own? Back in therapy soon after, the therapy room felt like a cocoon. Soft light filtering through half-drawn blinds, casting long shadows on the worn leather couch where Mara sat. Knees tucked close. Jonas leaned forward in his armchair, his notebook balanced on one knee, eyes steady with that quiet warmth that always made her feel seen without being dissected. Let's talk boundaries today, Mara, he said, voice even, like a hand extended in fog. Think of a time when saying no felt impossible. What comes up? Her fingers twisted the hem of her sweater, confusion swirling in her chest like smoke. The betrayal with Alex still echoed, his voice in old voicemails demanding her silence, her compliance. But she wouldn't revisit those clips. Not here, not now. Everything, she murmured, gaze dropping to the floor. Like when my sister calls, expecting me to drop everything. I just say yes, even when it hurts. Jonas nodded, no judgment. That's the hook, guilt. It whispers you're selfish for protecting yourself. But what if no is a door you close, not to shut out the world, but to keep your space safe? She glanced up, catching sight of the actual door behind him. Solid oak, firmly shut against the hallway's murmur. It stood there, unyielding, a silent guardian. For a moment, it mirrored her turmoil, locked tight. But was it trapping her in or holding the chaos out? Her pulse quickened, a knot of shame tightening. If I say no, they'll think I'm broken, unlovable, like I deserved what Alex did because I couldn't speak up. The words hung, raw and trembling. Confusion clawed deeper. Why did refusal feel like betrayal of herself? Jonas waited, then gently prompted, try it now. Imagine your sister asking for that favor. Say no, out loud. Mara's throat burned. I can't. But his encouraging nod pulled her forward. She straightened, breath shallow. No, I won't come over tonight. I need time for me. The syllables tumbled out, clumsy, laced with fear. Guilt surged, hot and familiar, accusing her of cruelty. Yet, as they echoed in the quiet room, something shifted, a faint resolve blooming beneath the panic. Her shoulders eased, just a fraction. Jonas smiled faintly. Feel that? It's not destruction. It's a boundary, Mara. You're right to it. She stared at the closed door again, now seeing possibility in its stillness. Not a prison, but a choice. Could she refuse without the weight of self-blame crushing her? The question lingered, unanswered, as determination flickered to life in her eyes, steadying her against the inner storm. That evening, after the group session, the support group room hummed with the fading echoes of shared stories, the circle of chairs emptying like petals after a storm. Mara lingered by the window, her fingers tracing the edge of a worn notebook. The city's twilight bleeding soft orange through the blinds. Uncertainty coiled in her chest, a familiar tightness, wanting this fragile connection with Lena, yet terrified that accepting it would mean blurring the lines she'd only just begun to draw. Lena approached, her steps quiet but deliberate, holding out a small woven bracelet in her palm. Threads of deep blue and earthy brown intertwined, simple knots holding them taut. For you, Lena said, voice steady as the woman who just shared her own raw reclaiming of space. It's nothing fancy, just something I made after my last big boundary win. The threads? They're like us. Stronger when they're tied right. Visible so no one mistakes where we stand. a reminder that support doesn't mean we let the world pull us apart. Wear it, and think of me holding the line with you. Mara's hand hovered, heart stuttering. The gift pulled at her, warm and insistent. But doubt whispered, what if this openness invites the old chaos? What if saying yes means she'll falter again, swallowing her own voice to keep the peace? She met Lena's eyes, those knowing depths that had mirrored her fears just minutes ago. Slowly, Mara extended her wrist, letting Lena slip the bracelet on. The knots brushed her skin, a gentle weight, grounding. I want this, Mara murmured, the words tasting foreign, unpracticed. Her pulse quickened, the room's muted light catching the weave's subtle gleam. But I need space sometimes. Not all the time, just when it's too much. I need you to hear that without it changing how you see me. Lena nodded, her smile a quiet anchor. I see you, and I'll hold my side of the line. We're in this weave together. The bracelet settled, a visible promise against Mara's skin, stirring something sharper than fear, a resolve blooming, tentative but real. Could she voice her needs like this, out loud, without the guilt crashing back? The question lingered as they stepped into the evening air, the threads a silent vow pulling her forward. One quiet evening at home, the grainy archival footage flickered on Mara's laptop screen, casting erratic shadows across her dimly lit apartment. Alex's face filled the frame, smiling that disarming smile from months ago, his voice smooth as he leaned into the interview mic. It wasn't about her faults, he said, eyes darting just off camera. She just needed to understand my side. Betrayal? That's a strong word. We were both lost. Lies wrapped in half-truths, each word a hook pulling at the raw edges of her old wounds. Mara's breath hitched, her fingers hovering over the pause button. Anxiety coiled in her chest like a spring, tight and unrelenting. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in as memories flooded back. His late-night confessions, the gaslighting whispers that made her doubt her own voice. Retreat. That's what her body screamed. Slam the laptop shut, curl into the couch, let the isolation swallow her whole. Why watch this? Why invite the poison in again? Her pulse raced, a frantic drumbeat urging her to flee, to protect the fragile piece she'd scraped together. But then, unbidden, Jonas's voice echoed in her mind, steady as the metronome he'd used in their last session. Boundaries aren't walls, Mara. They're choices. You don't owe him your reaction. You're not responsible for his narrative. She froze, hand trembling midair. The screen glowed on, Alex's image blurring slightly as her eyes welled. No. She wouldn't rewind into self-doubt, wouldn't let his excuses rewrite her story. Slowly, deliberately, she let her hand drop to her lap. The footage played on, his words losing their bite against the anchor of those therapy hours, the maps of I need and this stops here they'd sketched together. Anxiety ebbed, not vanishing but yielding to a quiet firmness blooming in her core. She watched herself watching him, the distance a deliberate space she'd claimed. No message drafted in reply, no spiral into blame. Just this, her holding steady. The screen, that merciless archive of what was, now a mirror to what she'd become, unyielding, not to him, but to her own hard-won truth. As the clip faded to black, Mara exhaled, the question lingering like smoke. Could she keep this resolve when the next shadow called? In a moment of daily practice, Mara stood before the full-length mirror in her dimly lit apartment, the late afternoon light filtering through half-drawn blinds like hesitant fingers. Her reflection stared back, eyes shadowed, jaw tight, the faint lines of exhaustion etched around her mouth. She took a breath, shallow at first, and whispered the words Jonas had given her. "My worth is not a gift from others. It lives in me, unbroken." The voice in her head recoiled, sharp and familiar. "But you let it happen. You trusted too easily, pushed too hard. If you'd been enough, he wouldn't have left." Guilt coiled in her chest, a cold knot pulling her gaze downward to the scuffed floorboards. Her hands clenched at her sides, nails digging into palms. Doubt flooded in, thick as fog, blurring the edges of her resolve. Guilt whispered once more, urging her to twist it back, to blame her softness, her needs. But she held the line, breathing deeper now, feeling the knot loosen just a fraction. A quiet warmth stirred in her core, not triumphant, but steady, like dawn breaking through clouds. She lingered there, forehead nearly touching the mirror, tracing the outline of her face with her eyes. Could she truly hear this new voice rising, soft but insistent, without the old one dragging her under? The reflection softened, waiting. Unexpectedly interrupting her routine, the phone buzzed on the cluttered kitchen table, its screen lighting up like a flare in the dim afternoon light, filtering through half-drawn blinds. Mara's heart lurched. Alex's name, stark and uninvited, pulsing there. She froze, spoon midway to her mouth, the herbal tea she'd been nursing now forgotten, steam curling like doubt into the air. Her pulse quickened, a familiar knot twisting in her chest, pulling her back to those late-night arguments, the clipped apologies that never stuck. Why now? After months of silence, this intrusion felt like a hook yanking at the fragile seams she'd been mending. She stared at the vibrating device, fingers hovering, the world narrowing to that insistent hum. "Answer it," the old voice whispered. "Justify. Explain, smooth the edges like always." But Jonas's words echoed louder now, from their last session. "Your peace isn't negotiable." The tension coiled tighter, her breath shallow, skin prickling with the urge to dive back into the chaos. No. This time, the choice was hers, not a reflex. With deliberate slowness, she reached out, not to pick up, but to silence it. The screen went dark, the phone lay still, a closed door locked from the inside. Relief flickered, tentative. But it was there, a quiet anchor amid the storm. Her hands trembled slightly as she scrolled to Lena's contact instead, thumb pressing call before the doubt could swarm back. The line rang twice, then Lena's warm voice cut through. "Mara? Hey, everything okay?" Alex just called." The words tumbled out, raw but steady. I didn't answer. It felt right, like I'm finally choosing me. Lena paused, then chuckled softly, the sound a lifeline. "Damn, that's huge. Boundaries aren't walls, they're shields. How's it sitting with you?" Mara leaned against the counter, the knot in her chest easing, warmth spreading like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Scary, but solid. Like I can breathe without waiting for the next hit." They talked then, voices weaving through the receiver, Lena sharing a story of her own standoff, Mara admitting the fear that still lingered. By the time she hung up, the apartment felt less like a cage, more like a sanctuary she'd claimed. She glanced at the phone again, inert and unyielding. Had she really stepped into this new self? Or was the pull still waiting? The question hung, unanswered, as she turned toward the mirror across the room, ready to meet her reflection with clearer eyes. Building on that strength, Mara's footsteps echoed softly on the rain-slicked sidewalk, the city's hum a distant murmur under the weight of her pulse. The cafe door loomed ahead, its frosted glass etched with faint swirls like half-remembered promises. She paused, hand hovering near the handle, the threaded bracelet from Lena circling her wrist. A quiet anchor, its knots a reminder of boundaries woven tight. "Don't do this," the voice whispered from the shadows of her mind, Alex's echo slithering in. "They'll see through you, betray you. Turn away before it's too late." Doubt coiled in her chest, a familiar chill, urging retreat to the isolation she'd outgrown, but still craved in weak moments. Her breath caught. Why risk the fracture again? Why open when closing had kept her safe, even if it left her hollow? But Jonas's words surfaced, steady as a metronome. "You have the right to choose who enters. Not out of fear, but from strength." She glanced at the bracelet, fingers tracing its weave, feeling the survivor threads pull her back to center. The anxiety lingered, a low hum in her veins, but she let it sit, observed it like a cloud passing. No silencing her needs this time, no passive nod to the past's demands. With a deliberate exhale, Mara pushed the door open. It swung inward slowly, hinges sighing, admitting a rush of warm air scented with coffee and fresh bread. The bell tinkled softly, announcing her arrival. Not as a victim slipping in, but as someone claiming space. Inside, the new person waited at a corner table. Neutral smile, open posture. No ghosts in their eyes. "Hi, Mara," they said, rising halfway. She nodded, sliding into the seat opposite, her posture straight but not rigid. "Yeah, good to meet you." The words came measured, laced with caution, yet laced too with the quiet certainty of her choice. No old accusations clawed at the edges. She'd left that door firmly shut. As they began to talk, light, tentative, the question hung unspoken in the steam rising from her cup. Could she step fully into this? Heart guarded yet open, without the past dragging her under? The door behind her clicked shut, but the threshold she'd crossed felt irreversible, a pivot toward light. In a final reflective session, the camera lingers on Mara's face, soft light filtering through the therapy room window, casting gentle shadows that dance like hesitant thoughts. She sits before a small vanity mirror, the one Jonas suggested for her daily reflections. Not the cruel kind that warps, but a simple one that holds her gaze steady. Her fingers trace the threaded bracelet on her wrist. Lena's gift, a quiet anchor against the pull of old whispers. "I used to think safety was something you begged for," she begins, her voice a low tremor, edged with the anxiety that still flickers like a dying bulb. The words catch in her throat as doubt creeps in. What if this calm is just a pause before the fall? What if choosing myself means choosing alone? Her eyes flick to the mirror, and there it is. Her reflection, not fractured by blame, but waiting, patient. The conflict coils inside her, a final tug-of-war between the girl who once silenced her needs to keep the peace and the woman now learning to draw the line. She exhales, slow and deliberate, choosing to lean in rather than pull away. But today, I feel safer. Not because the world's fixed, or because I've forgotten the hurt. Alex's calls still buzz like ghosts sometimes, tempting me to answer, to explain, to fix what wasn't mine to mend. No, it's because I've thanked myself for the patience it took to walk away, for saying no without apology, for standing at that cafe door, heart pounding, and only pushing it open when I was ready, not out of fear but choice. Her shoulders ease, the anxiety dissolving into a quiet calm that spreads like dawn light across her features. In the mirror, her eyes clear, reflecting not distortion, but a soft resolve. the self-compassion she's practiced like a mantra. I've built this space inside me, boundaries that aren't walls, but doors I control. And I'll keep choosing relationships that match my scale, where trust isn't demanded, but earned, where my voice isn't the echo, but the starting point. Allies like Lena, who remind me I'm not alone in this weave of threads holding us steady. She pauses, the bracelet glinting as she touches it again, her reflection smiling back. Not perfectly, but truly. The air hums with the unspoken, can I be the safe choice for myself and still filter the world beyond this mirror? The question hangs, not answered, but alive in her steady breath, a promise unfolding.